When the media announced Adrian's wedding news, he was lying on my lap reading documents. I thought it was just another piece of gossip and teased. How amusing, they're saying you're getting married next month. Adrian casually turned to the next page. You can play the piano to congratulate me when the time comes. I was stunned and dazed. Adrian stroked my face, a hint of mockery in his eyes. She finally agreed to marry me. Be good and don't cause any trouble. My mind went completely blank, and I looked at him at a loss. Adrian let out a light scoff and put down the document in his hand. Silly, it's not like we won't be able to see each other again. Or did you think I would marry you? Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. I fought back my tears and reached out to push against his shoulder. What have you taken me for these 5 years? Adrian raised his eyebrows and stood up. Lifting my chin, Secretary, you are the most capable secretary by my side. I asked again, unwilling to give up. Is that all I am to you? Just a secretary? Adrian frowned slightly, his fingers twirling my hair. Clara, do you know what I like most about you? You're obedient, sensible, rational, and clear-headed. The way you are now is really irritating me. My heart felt as if pierced by countless needles, a dense, overwhelming pain spreading throughout my body. He leaned in to kiss away the tears at the corner of my eye, his hand slowly moving downward. My body's instinctive reaction made me tremble slightly. He laughed, his voice full of mockery. Don't act so wronged. After all, you enjoyed it too, didn't you? I pushed him away forcefully. Flustered as I grabbed my clothes and hurriedly put them on, he sat up, propping his chin with one hand, and looked at me leisurely. By the way, you know my fiancée too. She's timid, so don't bother her. I froze. A sudden sense of foreboding washing over me. Who is it? The Chapman family's heiress, Delia. I felt as if struck by lightning. My mind instantly exploded, with a throbbing sensation at my temples mixed with intense pain. Why her? She. It was all a misunderstanding. Adrian pulled me to his side, knelt on one knee to help me put on my high heels. Delia has already explained it to me. If you treat her unkindly because of those past events, don't blame me for being ruthless. He gripped my ankle tightly, looked up at me, his eyes filled with blatant threat. I was in so much pain I could barely sit still, forcing out a faint voice. Understood, the winter in the north is truly freezing. I stood by the Cross River Bridge, my face stinging from the biting wind. I once thought that Adrian and I would get married, have children, and live out our lives peacefully and happily, just like any loving couple. After all, no other man could ever treat me as well as he did. He would clumsily cook my favorite dishes himself, and even though he hated the smell of stinky rice noodles, he still took me to City L. He even experienced the pain of childbirth, crying and saying we shouldn't have children in the future. I thought he loved me to the bone, but it turns out he never intended to marry me, let alone have children with him. The north wind howled past, and the water under the bridge rushed swiftly. I tiptoed forward, only to be suddenly grabbed and held tightly. The woman looked anxious, gripping my hand firmly. Oh dear, I've been watching you for a while. How could you be so desperate? If anything happens to you, your parents would be heartbroken. There's still a long road ahead in life. Nothing is insurmountable. She put all her gloves, scarf, and hat on me. Finally, she pulled out a baked sweet potato from her coat. I held back my tears for so long, and at this moment, they completely burst out, crying uncontrollably. I didn't want to end my life. I just wanted to sober myself up a bit, facing Adrian's harsh reality of not loving me, but faced with this unfamiliar concern, I suddenly felt so wronged and so unwilling. Adrian called just as I had returned home. Tomorrow I'm going to formally introduce Delia to everyone. You should come too. I tightened my grip on the phone. I don't want to go. Adrian snorted lightly. Clara, this is a notice, not a request. Delia wants you to be there. I said I don't want to go. My voice was terribly hoarse. The cold wind outside seemed to pierce right through to my bones, a chilling cold lingering all around me. Clara, Adrian lost his patience and said angrily, if I don't see you tomorrow, you'll never get your mother's medicine again. The call ended. I leaned against the wall and collapsed to the ground. Having been by Adrian's side for 5 years, I've met most of his friends, so now, when everyone sees me, there's a hint of mockery in their eyes. How dare she show her face? After being the mistress for so long, she really thinks she can fly up the branch and become a phoenix. She has no shame at all. Who here would stoop so low as to strip naked and climb into someone's bed? I lowered my gaze to the ground, pretending not to hear. Someone walked over and pressed my hand down, their sticky breath brushing against my ear. Clara, don't be sad, mister. Adrian is tired of playing around. You can come to me, I won't mind. All around were lewd and disgusting laughter. I gritted my teeth, stood up, and stepped back to put some distance between us. Please show some self-respect. He gave me a malicious glance at my chest, still putting on that act of purity. Believe it or not, I could have my way with you right now. My body tensed up instantly, and my palms grew damp with fear. Countless times I looked toward the door, my heart filled with an unexpected longing for Adrian's arrival. I know all too well how vile these people are. At this moment, only Adrian can help me. Faced with his relentless advance, I slowly retreated to the corner. Ms. Clara, just give in to Mr. Colin. Someone like you, a second-hand item, should be grateful anyone wants you at all. They looked at me with greedy, disdainful, excited eyes, nailing me firmly to the pillar of shame. With no way to retreat, I had no choice but to quickly step around him. But someone stuck out a leg and tripped me to the ground. My arm knocked over a nearby bottle of red wine, which fell and shattered into pieces. My hands pressed down on the glass shards, and my white dress was stained as if dyed with blood. The crowd burst into laughter. I struggled to move, trying to stand up, but a sharp pain shot through my ankle. Colin bent down and took my hand. Ms. Clara, would you like me to? The door suddenly swung open, and Adrian arrived late with Delia. He saw me lying on the floor and frowned slightly. What's going on here? Ms. Clara tripped and spilled the red wine while walking, and Mr. Colin was just about to help her up. Someone chimed in to smooth things over. Adrian shifted his gaze to Colin's hand that was pulling me, his expression darkening slightly. Let go. Colin stood up guiltily, putting some distance between us. Mr. Adrian, don't misunderstand. Adrian walked over quickly, a hint of concern in his eyes. Adrian, let me help Ms. Clara up, Delia said softly. Interrupting his motion to bend down, Adrian was taken aback for a moment, then turned around and said, okay. Delia reached out her hand to me. Looking at her smiling face, it felt as if I had returned to 10 years ago. The fear in my heart sent a cold sweat down my spine. Ms. Clara, do you not like being helped by me? Her expression was innocent, her voice tinged with a hint of grievance. I had not yet spoken, Adrian said coldly. Since she doesn't want to get up, let her lie there. She's such an embarrassment to me. Adrian, don't speak to a girl like that, Delia said softly, helping me to my feet. Are you okay? Although everyone knows Mr. Colin is a flower enthusiast, you didn't have to go to such lengths to get his attention by ruining yourself like this. Her face was full of kindness, but her eyes were filled with malicious calculation. The place where I was hurt was fiercely pinched by her. Unable to bear the pain, I pushed her away abruptly. Get away, don't touch me. Delia staggered a step, her body falling backward. I stared at her fixedly, desperately hoping in my heart that she would fall on that pile of broken glass. Unfortunately, Adrian caught her. He slapped me fiercely. Delia was kind enough to help you, yet you treat her like this, utterly ungrateful. My ears were ringing, and my feet felt as if they had stepped into empty air, falling endlessly downward. Adrian's mouth was opening and closing. There must have been many more harsh words, but unfortunately, I couldn't hear them. By the time I recovered, I only heard that last sentence. Clara, apologized to Delia. I looked at him in disbelief, wanting to defend myself, but not knowing how to say it. Perhaps even if I said it, Adrian wouldn't believe me. This is the last time I'm telling you, apologize, or you know what I'm capable of. His voice carried a hidden threat. I curled my lips in self-mockery and let out a bitter laugh. If I don't apologize, will you cut off my mother's medication? Is that it? He snorted coldly and said nothing more. How laughable. The one who once vowed not to let me suffer the slightest grievance is now forcing me to apologize to the person who bullied me back then. Just a week ago, he was sitting in front of my mom, peeling an apple for her, and confidently saying that she would surely live to be 100. Forget it, Adrian. Ms. Clara did nothing wrong, she just doesn't like me. Delia lowered her eyes, tugging at Adrian's sleeve. Don't you dare act all fake and caring here. I don't know where the courage came from, but I roared out the words. Delia seemed frightened by me, her eyes reddening as she shrank back, hiding behind Adrian. Don't be afraid, Adrian whispered to comfort her, then turned and viciously kicked my knee. What's your attitude? I was forced to kneel on the ground. Apologize. Clara, don't push me. Adrian's jaw was tight, a storm brewing in his eyes. My heart felt as if it had turned to ashes. My body no longer seemed to hurt as much. Only the special medicine developed by Adrian's company can cure my mother's illness. I can't give up my mother's life just for the sake of my dignity. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Please forgive me, Ms. Delia. I lowered my gaze, my voice broken and trembling. Late at night, I lay in bed staring blankly at the ceiling, while a heavy rain poured outside the window. I heard the sound of the smart door lock opening. Shortly after, the sound of the shower running came from the bathroom. I turned over and closed my eyes. The other side of the bed sank, and I was pulled into a damp, cold embrace. "Does your face still hurt?" he asked in a flat tone. "We've already broken up," I said calmly, pushing him away. He chuckled softly, still angry. "It's just an apology, isn't it?" I tightly clutched my clothes. "Stop it, I'm feeling really unwell," he said in a hoarse voice, burying his head in the crook of my neck. "Why don't you go find Delia? After all, we're not married yet." It wouldn't be fair to her. My heart is like dead ashes. I weakly let go, lifeless as a dead fish. Adrian, after fussing for a while and seeing no reaction from me, he turned over and turned on the light. "Clara, do you have to spoil my mood like this?" He lit a cigarette, his cold eyes sweeping over my naked body. "I really don't know what more you could possibly want. If it weren't for me, could you be living this decently now?" I clenched the bedsheet tightly. Tears silently streaming from the corners of my eyes into my ears, he forcefully turned my face toward him and froze upon seeing my terribly swollen, red eyes. His phone on the bedside table suddenly buzzed. It was Delia calling. "Adrian, it's thundering. I'm so scared." He comforted her softly for a few words and quickly got dressed. He turned and looked down at me, his voice icy cold. "Clara, you should reflect on yourself. Don't cry at the drop of a hat. Crying doesn't solve anything." "Yes. Crying doesn't solve anything, but no one cries to solve problems." I took several deep breaths at the hospital room door before pushing it open. "Whose mom is this pretty?" I teased with a smile. My mom was sitting on the bed knitting a scarf. Seeing me, she tossed aside the yarn and waved me over. "My precious baby is here." Then she pretended to be angry. "You haven't come to see me for days." I happily threw myself into her arms. "But I was just here 2 days ago." "Didn't the doctor tell you to rest? What are you busy with again?" She took my hand, showing off to me. "Oh, lying around all the time is so boring. I'm knitting a scarf for you and Adrian each. Do you think this color looks nice?" I specifically picked matching couple colors. My eyes felt sore as my hand slowly brushed over the scarf. "It looks nice. Sweetie, what's wrong?" My mom noticed my mood was off and asked with concern. "Did you have a fight with Adrian?" "No," I sniffled. "I just feel so lucky to have you by my side." "Mom, silly child." My mother patted my shoulder gently. "My only wish in this life is for you to be happy and safe. I can't accompany you forever. The road ahead is yours to walk. Adrian is someone you can rely on. When two people are together, there will always be unhappy moments. But as long as you talk it out, everything will be fine." "I know, Mom. Don't worry. He and we're doing well." I lowered my gaze to hide my emotions. "That's good." My mother nodded with relief. "When he's not busy, you should both come over and cough 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 asterisk." My mother suddenly started coughing uncontrollably, gasping for breath, her mouth filled with blood. Doctor. I quickly pressed the call button. A wave of immense panic washed over me. After emergency treatment, my mother was temporarily out of danger. I stopped the attending physician. "My mother's health has been stable for the past few years. What happened today, Mr.?" Dan looked at me with a troubled expression. "MS. Clara, you should go talk to Mr. Adrian." "What do you mean, Mr. Adrian stopped your mother's medication? If this happens again, her condition could become critical. You must act quickly." My heart sank to the bottom, frantically dialing Adrian's number, but it shows that the other party has turned off their phone. I made over 20 calls in a row, but the result was the same each time. I knew this was his punishment for my lack of cooperation last night. He was waiting for me to beg him. I searched everywhere: his company, his home, private clubs, golf courses. He was nowhere to be found. I collapsed weakly in front of the car. Finally, the butler at the villa couldn't bear to watch and told me Adrian's whereabouts. I quickly booked the earliest flight to Malaysia. Delia, her eyes were full of surprise the moment she saw me. "MS. Clara, what brings you here?" In contrast, Adrian showed no surprise at my arrival. I got straight to the point. "Mr. Adrian, my mother, she..." Adrian tutted lightly, raising his eyebrows as he wrapped an arm around Delia's waist. "I'm busy right now." I took a deep breath. "When will you have time?" "Then, depends on my mood," he said flippantly, propping his chin on his hand while leaning down to coax Delia. "How about I take you to watch the sunset?" "I knew it. Adrian, you're the best." Delia blushed and shyly kissed him. I turned to leave, but Adrian called out to me, "Stay right here." The night grew deeper, with a few stars blinking in and out of sight in the sky. Delia's coquettish laughter kept coming from the room. I looked down at the hibiscus flowers beside me. This year, They bloomed less than in previous years. In the 5 years I've been with Adrian, he has brought me here every winter. The same hotel, the same room, swimming pool, lounge chairs, swing, sofa, every spot here has witnessed our past happiness. He really knows how to humiliate me in different ways, but it doesn't matter, as long as my mom can survive, I'll do anything. The door was pushed open from the inside. I lifted my eyes, then lowered them again. Clara, you really are as pathetic as ever. She walked up to me with a smile, the cigarette between her fingers glowing and fading. The fear that had long vanished from my heart crept back into my mind. In a daze, I was transported back to my high school days. It was the same kind of cigarette glow. They treated me as an ashtray without any restraint. They flicked ashes into my mouth and stubbed cigarette butts on my chest. I was forced into an abandoned art room. Delia said she wouldn't cause trouble at my mother's stall if I crawled like a dog, day after day, throughout all 3 years of high school. The years that should have been my brightest, I lived in an endless hell. Someone suddenly kicked my knee. Delia leaned close to my ear, her voice like a demon's whisper. Don't be afraid, your life is going to get even more miserable from now on. I looked up, staring straight into her eyes, and asked the question I had long wanted to ask. Why do you hate me so much? She flaunted a smile and said, Clara, you're still so naive. Hating someone doesn't need a reason. Just like loving someone doesn't need one either. From the moment I first saw you, I disliked you. Everything you want to protect, I will take away, including your mother. Alarm bells rang in my mind, and soon Mr. Dan's call came through. MS, Clara, your mother needs medication immediately, or else. I didn't wait to hear the rest, quickly pulling open the room door. Adrian, come out, I beg you, resume my mother's medication. He was woken by my noise, his expression impatient. Then quickly got up and rushed toward me. A glimmer of hope ignited in my heart, but it was soon extinguished. Delia, what's wrong with you? Clara, what did you do to her? He pushed me away in a rage and picked up the unconscious Delia behind me. I anxiously explained, I didn't do anything, she's faking it. Adrian, I beg you, call the hospital. My mom will die without that medicine. He sneered coldly. Clara, you really will stop at nothing to get my attention. You'd even curse your own mother to death. Shameless and despicable. If anything happens to Delia, I won't let you off. He hurriedly walked out, and I knelt on the ground, clutching the hem of his pants. Everything I said is true. Making a phone call won't take much time. Adrian, if you make the call, even if you want to use my life to apologize to Delia, I'm willing. Get lost. Adrian kicked hard at my chest. It's truly pathetic that your mother has a daughter like you. By the time I anxiously rushed back to the hospital, it was already too late. I didn't even get to see my mother for the last time. I collapsed to the ground, as if an invisible hand was tightly gripping my heart, trying to tear it out of my chest. Mr. Dan walked over and handed me a bag. I'm sorry, he said, his eyes filled with guilt. I slowly opened it, and 2 brightly colored scarves appeared before my eyes. I could no longer hold back and burst into tears. Mom, I was wrong, it was my fault. After finishing my mother's funeral arrangements, I shut myself in at home. On the 3rd day, Adrian showed up. He pulled the curtains open disdainfully. What, don't want to live anymore? Is something so trivial really worth dying over? So in love with me, are you? The light from outside the window instantly stung my eyes. Then he threw a bag at me. Here, the one you've always liked. I brought it to you as soon as I got off the plane. Adrian's mouth opened and closed, and my head ached from the noise. Get out. I stood up, hysterically grabbing the scissors from the table and stabbing them fiercely into the bag. Are you insane? Adrian walked over and restrained my hands, throwing the scissors aside. Clara, think of your mother before you act. My patience has its limits too. If you keep causing such a scene, I will never give you the medicine. I suddenly began to laugh, the laughter growing louder and louder until I was sobbing uncontrollably. Adrian looked at me, his brow furrowed tightly. I slapped him hard across the face and pointed at the black and white photo on the wall. My mother is already dead. Impossible. When did this happen? Adrian froze, a trace of doubt in his eyes. Clara, you're lying to me again, aren't you? I had no strength left to struggle with him. Leaning on the table and breathing heavily, he gripped my wrist tightly, forcing me to lift my head. Clara, speak up. This kind of joke is not funny. I sneered coldly, trying hard to suppress the discomfort in my stomach. Yes, I was lying to you. My mother isn't dead at all. It was all an act I put on myself. Since you've seen through it, can you just get lost now? His jaw tightened, his eyes turned icy, and with a cold snort, he pushed me away. Don't play these boring games anymore. After Adrian left, I changed the password on the door lock. I entrusted a familiar real estate agent to sell the house. MS. Clara, the current housing market isn't doing well, so the price might. I cut him off. It's fine. Just sell it as soon as possible. This apartment was bought in the second year Adrian and I were together. Back then, I thought he was just a poor guy, to reassure my mom. I worked multiple jobs to save up for the down payment, intending it to be our future marital home. Later, his true identity was revealed, and in a fit of anger, I broke up with him. He stood downstairs in the pouring rain all night until the early hours, pitifully begging me, "Clara, I was wrong. Please don't leave me." Worn down by his persistence, my heart softened, and I made him ginger soup to ward off the cold. I thought I had found true love. The house was quickly sold due to its prime location and low price. The buyers were a young couple about to get married. The girl's eyes sparkled with excitement, her face full of anticipation for the future. "Sis, your taste is amazing. I really love the color scheme of this room. You're really giving up such nice furniture. These are all big brands." I smiled and nodded. "Yes, I don't want them anymore." "Then we're really getting a great deal." The girl excitedly shook the boy's arm. Although I bought this house, the decoration and furniture were all chosen by Adrian. He has always had his own unique style. The cost of the renovation ended up exceeding the price of the house. I packed my bags as quickly as possible and sent my resignation letter via email while on the high-speed train, then blocked Adrian's all contact information. I know Adrian too well: arrogant, narrow-minded, and selfish. Everything in life must go exactly as he expects. Once derailed, he would be filled with rage and resentment. My silent departure would undoubtedly be the greatest betrayal to Adrian. I had no power or influence, so I could only bet on his lingering resentment toward me. With that sliver of resentment, I could bring about his downfall. Adrian looked at Clara's resignation letter on the computer and angrily smashed the teacup in his hand. "Call her immediately and have her come speak to me in person." The HR director looked troubled and spoke cautiously. "MS. Clara's phone is turned off, then keep calling until she answers." The director nodded repeatedly and retreated without daring to breathe heavily. Adrian opened the WeChat chat window with Clara. "Clara, get to the company within 2 hours, or don't bother coming back ever again. I warned you long ago. Playing hard to get doesn't work on me. If you behave, I'll make time to visit your aunt with you tomorrow." He tossed his phone aside, but the fire in his chest only burned fiercer. Adrian had intended to leave Clara hanging for 3 or 4 days, never expecting she'd be bold enough to resign. Time suddenly seemed to slow down. Adrian, though looking at the documents in his hand, his attention was entirely on his phone. 10 minutes later, the phone finally vibrated. Adrian curled the corner of his lips, unhurriedly picking up the phone, but a flicker of disappointment flashed in his eyes upon seeing the message. "Adrian, I bought a lot of ingredients. How about I cook for you tonight?" Adrian absent-mindedly replied with an okay. Then he opened the chat dialogue with Clara. This time, he clearly saw 3 red exclamation marks. He had actually been blocked by Clara at some point. Adrian's face turned extremely grim. He stood up, grabbed his car keys, and quickly walked out of the office. The moment the door opened, Adrian barged right in. "Clara, you've got some nerve. How dare you? Who are you? Are you crazy?" The strange girl nervously picked up the shoehorn by the entrance. "Honey, call the police." "Clara, where is she?" he asked angrily. A boy from the kitchen quickly ran out and shielded the girl behind him. "You're looking for the previous owner, right? She already sold this house to us. You'd better leave now, or we'll report you for trespassing." Adrian was kicked out, and he could see clearly that none of the furnishings in the room Clara had taken with her in the past. Every time they arrived in a new city, Clara would buy the most representative fridge magnet. She said these were all sweet memories between them. Now those fridge magnets are still on the refrigerator, but she herself has disappeared. Adrian suddenly remembered something and quickly dialed Mr. Dan's number. "How is Clara's mother doing now?" Mr. Dan's tone was full of shock. "Mr. Adrian, MS. Clara's mother passed away half a month ago." Adrian felt as if struck by lightning. And it took him a moment to find his voice again. "Why didn't you tell me? Before you went abroad, didn't you say that anything about MS. Clara's mother should never bother you again? But when MS. Clara's mother passed away, I felt so sorry for her that I called you, MS." Delia answered and said she would pass the message to you. Adrian leaned against the wall, utterly devastated, his hand dropping weakly. His mind began to replay Clara's desperate face over and over again. His heart felt as if it were being sliced by a knife, piece by piece, nearly tearing him apart alive. Delia's call came through for the 3rd time before he snapped back to reality. Adrian, I've almost finished cooking. Hurry back. Clara's mother passed away. Why didn't you tell me? Adrian's voice was icy. Oh, I forgot, Delia replied casually. Is it that important? Isn't Clara just a secretary? Adrian felt a lump in his throat. His fingers clenched into fists as he slammed them heavily against the wall. Adrian, are you angry? Delia's voice trailed off with a hint of grievance. You blame me, don't you? I didn't do it on purpose. I thought since you dislike Clara so much, you wouldn't want to hear about her affairs either. Adrian was stunned. Did he hate Clara? But why did his heart ache so much now? He wanted to see her, desperately craving to see her right away. Adrian irritably hung up the phone and then dialed another number. Find out immediately where Clara has gone. When I saw Adrian downstairs at the guest house, I wasn't surprised. With his power, finding someone's whereabouts was as easy as turning over his hand. It all depends on whether he wants to or not. Fortunately, I bet right. I continued to bury myself in planting flowers, the sound of footsteps drawing nearer until a pair of meticulously crafted leather shoes appeared before my eyes. Clara. Come back with me. His voice was hoarse and deep. Adrian, there's nothing left between us anymore. I held back my emotions and spoke calmly. He suddenly bent down and grabbed my wrist, his eyes reddening. I'm heartbroken about Auntie's death too. I really didn't know it would turn out this way. Clara, you should have told me earlier. I should have told you earlier. My eyes widened with fury as I let out a cold laugh. Adrian, have you gone senile? I flew to Malaysia and knelt on the ground begging you. I said my mom would die without that medicine. What did you say then? After my mom passed away, when I pointed at the black and white photo on the wall, what did you say then? Have you forgotten all this? Adrian, you killed my mom. I hate you. I could never forgive you in this lifetime. Adrian's eyes darkened. He hurriedly explained, Clara. At that time but found words were pale and indefensible. Finally, he lowered his head, his back slightly bent. I'm sorry. What do you want? I can compensate you. I picked up the rose beside me and swung it at him forcefully, crying hysterically. I just want my mom back alive. Adrian, can you do that? I didn't agree to go back with Adrian, and he didn't leave either. He just stood guard at my door. The other guests at the homestay looked at him curiously. Sis, is this your boyfriend? He's so handsome, the younger sister asked me with boldness. But did he do something wrong? I nodded, and as she was about to ask for more details, I smiled and changed the subject. At night, a fierce wind howled, making the windows creak and groan. Before long, lightning flashed and thunder roared, and a downpour began to fall. In the past, whenever there was a thunderstorm like this, I would huddle fearfully in Adrian's arms. He would laugh at me for being a coward while gently patting my back to comfort me. But now, no matter how heavy the rain or how loud the thunder, it stirs no emotion in me. There was a rapid knocking at the door. I opened the door to find the young girl who had questioned me earlier in the afternoon. She was still holding an umbrella in her hands. Sis, the rain is too heavy. Please forgive him, or else he'll definitely get sick if this keeps up. I turned cold-faced. Do you like his face? The young girl didn't expect me to be so blunt. Her ears turned red, and a hint of anger flickered in her eyes. I just couldn't stand it, that's all. She opened her umbrella and ran angrily to the drenched Adrian. Don't stand here anymore, she doesn't care about you at all. Adrian stared at me without blinking, a glimmer of hope still lingering in his eyes. It was on a rainy night like this before that Clara forgave him once. The girl persistently grabbed Adrian's arm. Come on. I'll take you to warm up. Adrian turned around irritably and pushed her away forcefully. Don't touch me. Who do you think you are? The girl staggered, fell to the ground, and splashed water everywhere. Her eyes were filled with disbelief, her white dress stained and disheveled. The farce over, I turned and closed the door. The morning air after the rain is always exceptionally fresh. It's just a pity about the roses I planted yesterday. They were knocked askew by the heavy rain. Adrian still stood in place, his face pale, his eyes bloodshot, looking utterly shattered. When he saw me, his gaze flickered. Clara, are you going out? His voice was terribly hoarse. I had put on light makeup today and was wearing a pretty yellow floral dress. I ignored him and looked straight out of the small courtyard. Clara, let's go. The boy on the electric scooter waved at me with a smile. Adrian turned his head, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly. I walked past him. But he grabbed my wrist. Who is he? Friend. My tone was flat, my gaze falling on his hand. Let go. Adrian's lips moved, but he said nothing, the light in his dark eyes sparse and shattered. I shook him off forcefully and quickly took a seat in the back, letting the guy help me put on the helmet. Adrian stood frozen in place, his dark eyes soon glazed over with a shimmering wetness. In an instant, His head spun and the world turned upside down in his eyes. When he woke up again, Adrian had already returned to City J. Delia was sitting by the bed, wiping sweat from his forehead. Clara, Adrian felt weak all over, struggling to sit up. Delia held him down, her voice tinged with anger. What are you trying to do? You still have a fever. Get off. Who told you to bring me back? Adrian roared, the veins on his arms bulging from the strain. Delia was both angry and heartbroken. If I hadn't brought you back, you'd be dead. Adrian, snap out of it. We're getting married in 10 days. Adrian froze. Clara had mentioned marriage before. Back then, her eyes sparkled like stars, and she would often wrap her arms around his neck, coquettishly pleading, Adrian, I've already bought the house. When will you marry me? She smiled brightly and radiantly. Even though he brushed her off with clumsy excuses every time, she still never tired of it. Adrian knew that the 23-year-old Clara loved him deeply. But the 27-year-old Clara looked at him with coldness and resentment in her eyes. Watching this, his heart felt as if it were being cut by a knife. Delia was beautiful, gentle, and came from a good family. She was well suited to be his wife. He had once liked her in his youth. This should have been the most correct choice. But now, he regretted it. After 5 days of quiet, I saw Adrian again in the small courtyard. He looked haggard, with deep dark circles under his eyes. Clara. I've already called off the engagement with Delia. Have you seen the news? I sat in the chair, absent-mindedly arranging the flowers. So, what does that have to do with me? Or did you think I would marry you? Adrian pursed his thin lips and slowly knelt on the ground. I know that no matter what I do now, it can't make up for the hurt I've caused you. But Clara, please believe me, I truly love you, and you're the only one I love. As for Delia, that was just the unwillingness of youth. I hope you'll give me another chance. Let me use the rest of my life to prove it. I promise I'll never make you shed another tear. I stood up irritably, looking down at him from above. Adrian, do you know what I like most about you? Your rationality and clarity. The way you are right now is really getting on my nerves. Adrian felt as if struck by a sudden blow, his mind buzzing and exploding in an instant. These were the words he had once said to Clara. And now the boomerang had hit him right between the eyes. Only then did he realize how much it hurt. Clara, do I have to go through all the grievances you once suffered before you'll forgive me? I curled my lips maliciously. Give it a try. It was still the same room, still the same people. But this time, the protagonist became me. Colin was beaten to a pulp, kneeling on the ground and begging me for mercy repeatedly. Clara, you're magnanimous. Please let me go. I picked up the wine bottle on the table and smashed it hard against his head. Glass shards flew everywhere as he trembled, lying on the ground and gasping for breath. I stepped on his hand and smiled gently, saying, Mr. Colin, do you want me to help you up? He shook his head in fear. Adrian took my hand and carefully wiped the red wine from it with a handkerchief. I cooed with a playful laugh, Adrian, before, they all said I was the other woman, and even claimed I stripped naked and climbed into your bed. You have to prove it for me today. Everyone present held their breath, not daring to make a sound. Adrian swept his gaze over the crowd. All along, it's been me who's been persistently chasing after her. Clara is my girlfriend, pursued openly and honorably. I won't tolerate any of you spreading nonsense. They repeatedly agreed. Clara is gentle, kind, beautiful, and pure, a perfect match for you, Mr. Adrian. In the past, we were also misled by others, which led to some misunderstandings about Clara. We sincerely ask for Clara's forgiveness. The smoothness of their attitude shift was truly astonishing. It's good to have power and influence. The door was pushed open. Delia walked in with a dark expression. Adrian, how could you threaten me with the cooperation between the two companies? This kind of self-destructive move is really foolish. Adrian was unfazed. As long as it works, I think you've really lost your mind. What kind of potion did she feed you? Delia stormed over to me in a fury, raising her hand to slap me. Adrian grabbed her arm and shoved her hard, sending her tumbling to the ground. You were brought here to apologize to Clara, not to cause trouble. Delia stood up in disarray, her hair in complete disarray. So you think you can win her forgiveness this way? Don't be foolish, she's just toying with you. Adrian slapped her in a fit of rage. If it weren't for you repeatedly sowing discord, Clara wouldn't have left me. Apologize. He leaned in closer to Delia, lowering his voice. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind exposing all the shady dealings of the Chapman family group to the public. Delia paused slightly, her gaze unfocused, teeth tightly biting her lower lip. I slightly curled my lips, lowered my eyes, and tugged at Adrian's sleeve. Let it go, Adrian. Delia has done nothing wrong, she just doesn't like me. That's all." I raised my foot and kicked her knee hard, asking with a bright smile, Delia, are you okay?" She cried out in pain and knelt before me, looking up with a face full of fury. The weight in my heart suddenly felt much lighter. In the evening, Adrian took me to the place of our first date. "Clara, your favorite strawberry ice cream." He handed it to me excitedly. His gaze was as clear and passionate as it was 5 years ago. I calmly took it and took a bite. A cloyingly sweet taste instantly filled my entire mouth, immediately followed by a bitter sensation. Things remain, but people change, no matter how much I pretend. I can't go back to the past. Adrian, his eyes grew brighter. He clearly misinterpreted my lack of refusal. But that's fine. The higher his hopes, the deeper his despair will be. We rode the carousel, tried the drop tower, and finally settled into the Ferris wheel. The entire City J landscape unfolded beneath our eyes. At the peak, Adrian kneeled on one knee and took a ring out of his pocket. The diamond sparkled brilliantly. "Clara, let's forget the past. From now on, let's be together properly. I will protect you with my life. Will you marry me?" I lowered my gaze without a word, letting him slip the ring onto my ring finger. Adrian has a habit of drinking milk before going to bed at night. When he saw me personally bring it to him, the excitement in his eyes was almost palpable. "Clara, I feel so happy." He held my waist, lingering and reluctant to let go. I looked at the empty glass bottle covered in milk stains and let out a long sigh. Overnight, City J was turned upside down. Chapman family group scandal of abusing young girls trends online. It also exposed other crimes like tax evasion, murder, and property seizure. Delia was also exposed for her past bullying of classmates, which led to someone falling from a building. When the wall collapses, everyone pushes. Those previously bullied by the Chapman family group but afraid of their power are now all stepping forward. The court has sentenced all the individuals involved in accordance with the law, but this is not the most explosive news. Adrian has a long list on his computer. It details the names, times, locations, and gifts of public officials who accepted bribes and sexual favors. And I sent it to all the major official media outlets. A special investigation team was immediately set up to thoroughly look into the matter. Soon, many long-standing wrongful cases were exposed one after another. Delbert's family group's top executives fell apart and fled collectively. The legal department called Adrian over 20 times, but no one answered. No one knew I had added a large amount of sleeping pills to Adrian's milk. And no one knew that Adrian was now tied up in an abandoned iron factory. He cried out to heaven with no response, and to the earth with no relief. No phone, no food, and no water source. When things had settled down a bit, I sent Adrian's location to the relatives of the fallen officials. Among those people were some who were extremely vicious. I rubbed the ring on my ring finger, took it off, sold it, and made a good amount of money. "Adrian R. You want me to forget everything that happened in the past, but that was my mother's very life. How could I forget? How dare I forget? You taught a lesson to those who once bullied me, but the one who bullied me the most was you. You don't even think about how I could forgive you, let you off." The plane cut across the sky, and I opened the window shade. Beneath the clouds, the mountains stretched endlessly. Outside the window is a path of light. The end. Story 2. I have loved Marlon Miles for a full 10 years. He is naturally cold and aloof, yet he has never opposed our marriage. I thought that he was also willing. Until that day, I braved the torrential rain to bring him stomach medicine. I happened to see the young lady of the cooperative company persuading him to drink alcohol. I stepped forward to stop them, but he spoke in a contemptuous tone. "Do you really think you're the young mistress of the Miles family? Mind your own business." In the bustling bar, my tears fell together with the rain. "Marlon, from now on, your affairs have nothing to do with me." The lights and shadows in the bar intertwined. I held the stomach medicine in my hand, feeling icy cold all over. The playful and disdainful glances of the people around fell on me. But what stung me the most was Marlon's impatient expression. He has a weak stomach and must take medicine after meals, otherwise he will have a stomachache. I had called him several times just now, but no one answered, so I had to ask someone for the address of today's gathering. When I was almost there, it started to rain cats and dogs. It was exactly the rush hour, and for a 500-meter road, the navigation showed that it would take half an hour. I was anxious to send the medicine to Marlon, so I ran here in the rain, under the dim light. Irene leaned against Marlon's arms, coquettishly feeding him wine. The man who always dislikes physical contact with others now let the girl in his arms do whatever she wanted to him. When I pushed the door open, her wine glass just touched Marlon's lips. There was an indescribable, ambiguous and charming atmosphere. a pang of sadness welled up in my heart. And what came to my mind was the pale face of Marlon when he was suffering from his illness. I blurted out, "He can't drink alcohol." The crowd fell silent all of a sudden. I subconsciously lowered my head and saw that my black leather shoes stained with mud and water left a small water stain on the floor. I suddenly felt a bit embarrassed, but what made me even more embarrassed was Marlon's response. He leaned on the sofa and softly chid, "Do you really think you're the young mistress of the Miles family? Mind your own business." Without even looking at me, he tilted his head back and drank the whiskey in the glass in one gulp. All the words that I hadn't had a chance to say stuck in my throat. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I could only desperately hold back my tears, trying to make myself look less embarrassed. Seeing this, the others tacitly averted their eyes, treating me like invisible air. When they walked back and forth, they carefully bypassed me. A girl couldn't stand it anymore and handed me a dry towel, but she was immediately pulled away by her companion. "Why are you paying attention to her?" The rain on my hair kept falling. The past events played out one after another in front of my eyes. I suddenly understood that Marlon didn't oppose this marriage. It wasn't because he was willing, it was because he simply didn't care. He didn't care about the agreement between MS, Miles, and Grandma. Nor did he care about me. To put it more bluntly, he disdained it. Because of his disdain, he remained silent when others said that I wasn't worthy of him. Because of his disdain, in his eyes, my full of concern was nothing but meddling, embarrassment, grievance, and anger intertwined. But in the end, they turned into a strange kind of calmness. I dried my hair bit by bit and quietly placed the stomach medicine on the table. I took one last look at Marlon, then I left the bar without looking back. The lights in the Miles family mansion were still on. MS, Miles and several of her friends were sitting in the living room drinking tea. I stood at the door changing my shoes. And the conversation in the room was clearly audible. "Selena, you don't really plan to let Marlon marry that little nanny, do you? I have to say, you're just too superstitious. Children are prone to getting sick anyway. Look, Marlon is all grown up now, and his body is in great shape, isn't it?" The speaker was MS, Miles' best friend. Ever since Marlon and I got engaged, she had been finding fault with me everywhere. She had said such things not only behind my back but also right in front of me many times. MS, Miles sighed. "Rose is also having a tough time. She takes good care of Marlon. When Marlon gets married, I'll compensate her." Tears welled up in my eyes. I bit my lower lip tightly and suddenly remembered the way MS, Miles had begged me not to leave with tears in her eyes. Marlon had been in poor health since he was a child. When he was 14, he had a life-threatening serious illness. In a hurry, MS, Miles resorted to all kinds of methods and invited a very famous Taoist priest to take a look. After the examination, the Taoist priest took a fancy to me. He said that I had a rare lucky horoscope for my husband. As long as I got engaged to Marlon, his health would improve. Just like that, I, an orphan girl adopted by the Miles family's nanny, became Marlon's fiancée overnight. Marlon had always been cold towards me. When I greeted him, he would pretend not to see me. When I secretly looked at him, he would frown and turn around. Once he went back in advance due to something urgent. I didn't know that and didn't dare to look for him at school, so I could only keep waiting at the school gate. I waited and waited until it was dark and there was no one left in the school. Then I walked back to the Miles family's house with tears in my eyes. That day, I thought for a long time and finally mustered up the courage to talk to MS, Miles about calling off the engagement. But MS, Miles pleaded with me not to be angry with Marlon while crying. She also listed many things to prove that Marlon liked me too. I still remember a few of those words. "Rose, Marlon is a child who doesn't know how to express his feelings. He doesn't say it, but in fact, he can't live without you in his heart. If he didn't like you, why would he go to school with you every day? Why doesn't he have any contact with other girls? Why doesn't he oppose this marriage?" Just because of these words from MS, Miles, I persisted year after year under Marlon's cold gaze. MS, Miles also treated me better and better. Sometimes, I would even secretly imagine her as my own mother, but illusions are bound to be shattered after all. While I was trying my best to learn how to be a good wife and a good daughter, they had already unilaterally pronounced my death sentence. Even though I had lived in this house for 10 years, I didn't know if I should walk in at this moment. On the dark street, I called my college roommate Teresa. "Teresa, is that offer of working in the United States you mentioned last time still valid?" When I got back to the Miles family's house, the tea party had already ended. MS, Miles' face darkened a bit when she saw that I had come back alone, and her tone was also reproachful. "Rose, why didn't you bring Marlon back with you? It was as if I had deliberately left Marlon outside. But she clearly knew that no one could stop Marlon from doing what he wanted. In the past, when I heard her say such things, I would feel wronged, but more than that, I would feel uneasy. I was afraid that I might do something wrong and make her angry. But now, I just calmly stated the fact: he didn't want to come back. You should still persuade him even if he doesn't want to. You clearly know that he is not in good health. Who was he with? Why didn't you wait for him there? I lowered my eyes and didn't want to argue with her, just his usual friends. And Irene. When Miles heard Irene's name, her face immediately softened. Xiaohe was there too. Then, as if she suddenly remembered something, she frowned and gave me a look. I knew what she was thinking. She was just afraid that my presence would make Irene unhappy. I didn't feel anxious and try to be submissive as I used to when she was unhappy. I changed my shoes and went back to my room on my own. And started packing my luggage. I had very few things in the Miles family's house. I threw away what I could throw away, and the rest just filled a 28-inch suitcase. There was only one thing that I didn't know how to deal with. It was a teddy bear doll wearing a brown dress. Marlon gave it to me on the day Grandma passed away. The young man gently hugged me into his arms, and his voice was hoarse. Rose, don't be sad. From now on, I will take care of you. A hug and a promise out of sympathy made me think that it was proof that Marlon was different to me. The teddy bear stared straight at me, as if mocking my self-indulgence. I originally wanted to return it to Marlon, but then I thought about it. Even if I gave it back to him, according to his character, he would just throw it into the trash can without a care. I almost didn't sleep all night. I went downstairs with my things early in the morning. Marlon was having breakfast. When he saw the package in my arms, a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes, but he didn't say anything. As always, he didn't care. It was Miles who asked, "Where are you going?" "Nowhere. I just packed some things that I don't need anymore and plan to take them out." Before I could finish my sentence, Marlon's phone rang. He responded a few times, then got up and put on his clothes. "There's something urgent at the company. I'll go there first." Miles reminded. "Drive slowly on the way." No one cared about my answer anymore. I smiled self-deprecatingly and went out to take a taxi to the mall. The Miles family has a driver, but I never use him. I also earn my tuition fees and living expenses by working part-time jobs. In this way, I maintained my poor self-esteem in front of Marlon. It seemed that as long as I didn't take advantage of the Miles family, I could be a bit more at ease when facing Marlon. In the most prosperous mall in City S, the lights were dazzling. I stood in front of the counter, thinking of buying a brooch for Teresa as a gift. A familiar voice came from behind, with a hint of coquetry. "Brother Marlon, do you think this necklace suits me very well?" I turned my head subconsciously. The tall and stern man and the charming girl stood together, and anyone would say that they were a perfect match. I just glanced at them and happened to meet Marlon's gaze. There was a trace of impatience in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" I knew that he was suspecting that I was following him. When he was in high school, he would go out to relax with a few friends every weekend. Miles was worried about him, so she asked me to follow him, but those young masters and ladies didn't like me. I didn't dare to refuse Miles, so I could only secretly follow them every time. When Marlon found out, I would lower my head and stammer, not knowing how to respond. But now, I pointed at the salesperson who was packing the item and said calmly with a composed expression, "I came here to buy a gift for Teresa. I'll leave right away." Marlon didn't quite believe me and frowned at me, but I didn't pester him or say anything more. From beginning to end, it was as if I had just met an acquaintance whom I wasn't very familiar with in the mall. When I got home, I knocked on Miles' door. After all, I had lived in the Miles family's house for so many years. Out of both affection and reason, I should say goodbye to her. When she heard that I was going to work in the United States, she stammered and asked me, "Going to the United States? Then what about your marriage with Marlon?" The words we said when we were children don't count. When she heard me say this, Miles pretended to complain, but there was a look of relief on her face. "You child. How could you make such a big decision without discussing it with the family? But since you've decided, just do as you like. You're all grown up, and I, as an aunt, can't interfere in your relationship matters. When are you leaving?" Looking at Miles, a pang of sadness welled up in my heart. It wasn't for others, but for my past self. "Tomorrow morning." So soon. This time, Miles was really a bit shocked, because tomorrow was her birthday, and every year on her birthday, I would prepare a surprise for her and cook a table of dishes with my own hands. Miles would hug me and joke, "Still, the daughter-in-law is considerate. That brat Marlon has never cooked for me." I paused for a moment and continued, I won't attend your birthday party tomorrow, to avoid misunderstanding. As for what others might misunderstand, both Miles and I knew it very well. She also thought of this, and her expression was complicated. She hesitated for a long time and didn't say anything. I took it as her acquiescence. The next day, I went downstairs on time. Marlon was leaning on the sofa, carefully instructing the butler on the matters needing attention at the banquet. The fine black hair fell on his forehead, adding a bit of youthful charm to the always steady man. Irene was wearing a white evening dress and leaning against the armrest of the sofa. The two of them were so close that they almost stuck together. The suitcase was a bit heavy, and it made a clear sound when it bumped against the marble stairs. The people in the living room stopped what they were doing and looked towards me. Sorry, I smiled politely and tried my best to lift the suitcase higher. Marlon took a few steps forward and pointed at my suitcase. What are you doing? His expression was still cold, as if he was asking about something insignificant. If it weren't for the noise that disturbed him just now and the fact that today was Miles' birthday, he probably wouldn't even bother to ask. I didn't want to talk to him more, so I gave a vague answer. I have some work to deal with and I'll be out for a few days. Marlon took a step forward and his expression was indifferent. Today is my mother's birthday. The matter is urgent. I've already told Miles about it. I tried to sidestep and leave, but he stood motionlessly in front of me, exuding an air of displeasure. When will you be back? I won't be back. The words were on the tip of my tongue, but I didn't know how to say them. It really wasn't appropriate to say such words on this occasion. It was Irene who smiled and spoke. Don't you make longevity noodles for Aunt G every year? Marlon said something to you a few days ago. You're deliberately not attending Aunt G's birthday today. People who don't know might think that the Miles family has done something to you. I pretended not to hear her words, pulled the suitcase, and quickly walked past the two of them. But Marlon didn't want to let me go and grabbed my wrist. The air was filled with a suffocating sense of oppression, as if the temperature had suddenly dropped a few degrees. Marlon's voice was deep and cold, and every word was filled with disdain. You're just an amateur designer. What urgent matter could you possibly have? You're just mad because I didn't give you face in the bar a few days ago. Is it really necessary? I stopped in my tracks. So Marlon knew that what he did would make me lose face and feel embarrassed. He just took it for granted that I wouldn't be angry, so he was so reckless. I turned around and looked at him seriously. My voice was not loud, but it was enough for him to hear. It is necessary. What? Marlon's breath caught for a moment, followed by a long silence. It was only when I stepped across the threshold that he spoke. If you want to leave, do it on your own. Don't order the Miles family's driver around. It was pouring heavily outside. Auntie Anna noticed that the atmosphere was not right and came forward to mediate. Miss, it's raining so hard outside. If you really want to leave, you should at least wait until the rain stops. She didn't know that I was going to the United States, nor did she know that I couldn't wait for the rain to stop. Marlon's voice became even colder. Auntie Anna, don't try to persuade her. Auntie Anna was almost in tears and kept muttering, if you get caught in such heavy rain, you'll surely get sick. My nose tingled with sadness. I whispered a few words in Auntie Anna's ear, and then she let go of the hand that was holding me. Marlon didn't know that I had never ordered anyone in the Miles family around. The car that I had booked in advance had already arrived at the door. When I walked out, I could still hear Auntie Anna making her last attempt. Master, miss, she really left. Marlon's reply was devoid of any emotion, and his words were as hurtful as ever. Let her go. Just make sure she doesn't come crying and begging me to take her back later. The Miles family's house was very close to the airport. After checking in, I still had a few hours to spare. I found a restaurant and sat down, then started looking at the design drawings. Teresa had almost everything ready on her end. She was just waiting for me to go there and start designing the first batch of ready-to-wear clothes. I lowered my head and sketched on the tablet, and my mind began to fantasize about my life in California, a life that belonged only to me, where I didn't have to please anyone anymore and didn't have to be a personal nanny 24 hours a day. Suddenly, the light was blocked. I was just drawing the lace details of the cuff, and I looked up impatiently. Excuse me, please move aside. What came into view was Marlon's face filled with anger. He stood in front of me, his hands in the pockets of his trousers. His slightly wet hair was sticking to his forehead, making him look a bit dejected. Rose, have you had enough of this tantrum? I was momentarily speechless. So in Marlon's eyes, not attending Miles' birthday party and not enduring his cold words as I used to was considered throwing a tantrum. A sense of powerlessness washed over me. Instead of answering his question, I asked him back, how am I throwing a tantrum? I've already told you that I have work to deal with. I also informed Ms. Miles in advance. Marlon sneered, and the rainwater slid down his unruly brow bone to his jawline. My mother has been so good to you, of course, she wouldn't go against your wishes. She's crying alone in your room now. I admit I was wrong about what happened in the bar the other day. I'm apologizing to you. Okay. My brush stopped. I keenly caught the key words in Marlon's words. Ms. Miles was crying. Then did she know that you came to ask me to go back? No, if she knew, she definitely wouldn't want to force you. As if to confirm Marlon's words, Irene's call came in. Brother Marlon. Auntie said that if Sister Rose doesn't want to come back, it's okay. Don't make things difficult for her. From the other end of the phone, there were voices of discussion. Selena, you're just too kind. The Miles family has provided for her with good food and accommodation, and how does she repay us? She leaves without even saying a word. I think she's just being pretentious, thinking that the Miles family can't do without her. I bet that Taoist priest back then was probably hired by her grandmother to deceive people. Yeah, there's no such supernatural thing in the world. Maybe that old nanny was the one who caused young Master G's poor health back then. My heart felt as if it had fallen into an ice cellar. I stood there, stunned. My body trembling. I was waiting for Ms. Miles' response. After a few minutes, when the discussion had even extended to whether I would secretly climb into someone's bed at night. Ms. Miles finally spoke. She said, no matter what Rose has done, she will always be my daughter in my heart. She didn't defend me, nor did she stop others from making malicious speculations. Instead, with such a sentence, she confirmed those absurd rumors. Each word pierced my heart deeply. The last trace of hope in my heart finally vanished completely at that moment. I looked up and stared at Marlon. I'll go back with you. In the black Bentley, Marlon still had an indifferent expression. Seeing that I was silent and looking out the window, he consoled me in a condescending way. If you go back and admit your mistake now, Mom will forgive you. The Miles family knows what kind of people you and your grandmother are. You don't need to take to heart what others say. A sense of powerlessness overwhelmed me. He was always like this. When I was on the verge of collapse and going crazy, he would calmly say, don't take it to heart. It was as if I was being unreasonable. But it wasn't him, Marlon, who was being slandered, so of course he didn't need to care. The car stopped steadily at the entrance of the Miles family's house. I didn't wait for Marlon and strode towards my room. Ms. Miles was still sitting on my bed crying, surrounded by a group of noble ladies trying to comfort her. Bang! The door hit the wall. When Ms. Miles saw it was me, a flash of panic crossed her eyes. Rose, why are you back? I threw my bag on the ground, and a dull pain surged in my heart. I'm back, aren't you happy? Her best friend immediately stepped forward. Rose, what kind of attitude is this? Is this how you talk to your elders? Elders, I laughed bitterly. I'm an orphan. I only had a grandmother, and she passed away a few years ago. Which elder are you talking about, Amos? Mary was stunned on the spot, her face turning red with anger. She never expected that the Rose who used to just lower her head and apologize with a smile when scolded would talk to her like this. But there were always people willing to act as lackeys for the Miles family. A younger lady in the crowd spoke up. Miss Rose, which of your food, clothing, and daily expenses wasn't provided by the Miles family? You're just the granddaughter of a nanny. Without the Miles family, where would you get the money to study design? Everything you have today is given to you by the Miles family. You could even say that Ms. Miles is like your reborn parents. Others chimed in as well. Marlon arrived at this moment, seeing the tense situation between me and Ms. Miles. His eyes were as cold as ice. Rose, what do you mean by this? I retracted my gaze. Even though I had already let go, my heart still ached uncontrollably. These were the people I had once considered my family. It's nothing. It's just that everyone seems to have some misunderstandings about me. And I want to clarify them. Marlon still frowned at me. Rose, is there anything wrong with what they said? What exactly do you want to clarify? I didn't look at him anymore and calmly said, first, my tuition fees and living expenses have nothing to do with the Miles family. Someone laughed out loud. It has nothing to do with the Miles family. Could it be that she earned the money herself? Ms. Miles also looked at me with a pained expression. Rose, I know you care about your face. But since you had a marriage contract with Marlon before, no one would say anything if you used his money to pay your tuition fees. Her face was calm, but there was a hint of dissatisfaction in her eyes when she looked at me. As for what she was dissatisfied with, of course, it was my lack of sense in coming back to the Miles family and causing a scene at the banquet in front of so many people. I smiled at Marlon. Mr. G. Your mother said it's okay for me to use your money to pay my tuition fees. What do you think? Of course it's okay. Marlon replied instinctively, but halfway through, he suddenly looked up. Mom, weren't you the one in charge of Rose's school expenses? So that's how it was. Both mother and son thought that I had taken advantage of the other. No wonder they had been bossing me around. The other guests couldn't sit still either and exchanged glances with each other. All the people present were seasoned business people. Seeing the reaction of the Miles family's mother and son, they understood what was going on. Only MS, Mary, MS, Miles' best friend, was still pressing the attack. Tuition fees and living expenses are just small matters. You've lived in the Miles family's house for so many years. Which aspect of your food, clothing, housing, and transportation wasn't taken care of by Selena? I ignored her aggressiveness and continued. Second, if we really want to calculate, it should be the Miles family that owes me. I lived in my own home before I turned 18. After my grandmother passed away when I was 18, I moved into the Miles family's house. MS. Mary seemed to have found something to hold against me. That's been 5 or 6 years. You lived in a villa in the most expensive area of City S, and you ate ingredients that were airlifted from all over the world every day, leaving aside how much you've seen and experienced. Just the accommodation and food expenses alone are enough for you to pay back, and you still have the nerve to say that the Miles family owes you. Someone chimed in. Yeah, there were dormitories in the university, but she still commuted between the school and the Miles family's house every day. It's just that she disliked the dormitory conditions. When Miles heard this, her expression softened a bit, and Marlon stared at my face, not knowing what he was thinking. I looked at the person who spoke and smiled slightly. My grandmother was Marlon's nanny, but after she passed away, the Miles family didn't hire a new nanny. Guess who did all the work she used to do? Surely they wouldn't ask a live-in nanny to pay rent as well. The room fell silent. Some people also remembered my past in the Miles family. Yeah, the little girl has been quite hardworking. I heard that the one in the Miles family has poor health and is picky about food. So she gets up at 5 every day to cook porridge. My son also told me that Marlon didn't care about any miscellaneous matters at school, and it was all Rose who was busy taking care of things. Didn't Selena say that she regarded her as her daughter? Is this how she treats her own daughter? MS. Miles' face, which had just softened, darkened again. I flicked my hair and was about to continue. Third, enough. Marlon, who had been silent from the beginning to the end, suddenly spoke up and broke the silence. Rose, come with me, we need to have a good talk. I sat on the chair, and a sharp pain stabbed at my heart. What was there to talk about? I had known Marlon for 14 years, and I had countless times wanted to have a good talk with him. But he had only left me with one cold back after another. Now he wanted to talk. Unfortunately, there was no chance anymore. I went on talking to myself. Third, those who speculate that my grandmother deliberately deceived us into the marriage can stop. I already told Miles yesterday. The marriage between me and Marlon is off. Miles, isn't that right? Miles' face turned pale. Her usually dignified and noble face now showed a bit of embarrassment. The room was filled with silence, and the guests left in 2s and 3s under Mary's signal. Only the 3 of us were left in the room. Marlon's face was pale, and his voice trembled slightly. Rose, what you just said, it's all out of anger, right? I didn't answer. I glanced at him and turned towards the door. The driver was already waiting outside. I walked quickly and left Marlon's shouts far behind. Driver, let's go. Rose, don't leave. The moment I closed the door, a hand with distinct knuckles squeezed in. A low groan came from outside the car. Are you crazy? I instinctively let go of my hand. Marlon's palm was bruised and purple in the middle. But he seemed not to feel the pain and still pressed firmly against the car door. Seeing that I was staring at his hand, Marlon forced a bitter smile, and there was a pathological persistence in his eyes. Rose, have you calmed down a bit now? What answered him was the loud bang of the car door closing. In the rearview mirror, Marlon's smile froze on his face, and his figure became smaller and smaller. He didn't chase after me, he just stood there, like a statue being washed by the rain. Life in California was much more pleasant than I had imagined. Teresa and I opened a fashion design studio together. In the afterglow of the setting sun, we lay on the beach, admiring the handsome guys with 8-pack abs, and we justified it by saying that we were getting familiar with the human body structure. I just didn't expect that Marlon would still come looking for me. At the entrance of the studio, a man in a black suit was leaning against the wall, with a cold and aloof expression, which made many girls turn their heads frequently. When he saw me, he quickly extinguished the cigarette in his hand and said in a hoarse voice, Rose, long time no see. Actually, it hadn't been that long. It had only been a month since our last meeting. I didn't answer and walked straight past him. Marlon reached out and grabbed my shoulder, his eyes full of anxiety and regret. Rose, give me a chance to explain. Things aren't as you think. I was curious about what kind of explanation Marlon would give me. In the studio, Marlon looked around at my works with a complicated expression. Rose, did you design all these? Can I interrupted him. Get to the point. Marlon was a bit embarrassed, but seeing my impatient look, he didn't dare to say anything else. After a long while, he slowly said, Rose, I was really wrong that day in the bar. But it was because Irene was there. My father's car accident back then was very strange. There were rumors that the Sue family was behind it, but because there was no evidence, it was finally treated as a traffic accident. I got close to Irene just to see if I could find something from her. Marlon babbled on a lot, from the first time he met Irene, to how he got the evidence to bring down the Sue family, and then to how he didn't tell me the truth to protect me. But gradually, his voice got softer and softer, because he noticed that there was not the slightest change in my expression. Rose, what's wrong with you? I had a calm expression, but the words I said were like a thunderclap in Marlon's ear. I already know all the things you've said. I'm not a fool. Having lived in the Miles family for so many years, I even know some things better than Marlon himself. I know the knot that Marlon has been obsessed with for years. I can see the gloomy look in his eyes when he's with Irene. From beginning to end, I've understood that Marlon would have an unending feud with the Sue family. The one who didn't understand was Marlon. He stared at me intently, his pupils contracting slightly, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. Rose, what did you say? I took a deep breath, not wanting to recall those painful times. Marlon, the person who made me want to leave wasn't Irene, it was you. I did like you. But all you gave me was day after day of indifference. I also thought that since you didn't reject me, it meant that my love might touch your heart someday. But on that day in the bar, you made me realize a fact. Even if we really got married, I wouldn't be happy. Because the biggest problem between us isn't that you don't love me, but you simply don't respect me. That's not true. Marlon's face turned pale, and he retorted feebly, Rose, it's not like that. It's not like that. I just don't know how to love someone. Is it that you don't know how to love someone, or that you don't know how to love someone of a low status, someone whose love you feel ashamed of? Over the years, I had lived in fear and unease because of Marlon's indifference. But every time I wanted to give up, I would waver at the slightest bit of love he showed and fall into deeper self-doubt. It was not until that day, when I stood in the bar and tasted the saltiness of my tears, that I suddenly realized, he really loved me. He was angry that he actually loved someone like me in public. Teresa and I continued our routine of working during the day and going to the beach to study at dusk. Marlon settled down nearby and waited at the entrance of the studio every day. He didn't dare to come in and would just follow us from a distance when Teresa and I went out. Sometimes, when he saw that we were chatting happily, he would tentatively insert a few dry words. When he saw my suddenly cold expression, he would retreat to the side in silence. On the beach, the tide came in waves, the lights of the Santa Monica Pier in the distance twinkled. Teresa raised her eyebrows and gestured. Rose, look at him, he looks so pitiful. I followed her gaze. Marlon was sitting alone on the steps, and his back looked especially thin in the twilight. Noticing my gaze, he forced a flattering smile. He did look pitiful. But compared to the cold treatment and disdain I had received over the years, what did it matter? Suddenly, his smile froze, and his pupils contracted sharply. Bang! A sharp gunshot shattered the tranquility. The crowd started to stir. Rose, a familiar voice tore through the air. I turned around in a daze and saw Marlon running towards me with almost all his strength. He pressed heavily on me. A strong smell of blood wafted over, and warm liquid soaked through my shirt. Marlon. I tried to get up to check his injury, but he held me down. Don't move. His voice was very soft, but the strength in his hand was astonishing. Rose, don't get up. It's still not safe. The pungent smell of disinfectant in the hospital filled the air. I looked at Marlon lying in the hospital bed with mixed feelings. Have something to drink. Teresa handed me a cup of coffee and sat down on the chair beside me, looking a bit hesitant. Rose, do you and Marlon want to have a good talk again? I looked down at the tip of my shoe, and the scene on the beach came back to my mind. Teresa, you know what? When Marlon pounced on me, I felt grateful, scared, and surprised. I took a deep breath, but the only thing I didn't feel was heartache, before, not to mention getting shot. Even if he just scraped his hand while playing basketball, I would be extremely heartbroken. Teresa, he and I really can't go back to the way we were. Before I could finish speaking, there was a soft sound in the ward. I instinctively looked towards the hospital bed. Marlon had woken up at some point and was looking straight at me, his eyes filled with tears. He opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but only let out a sob. Marlon, I opened my mouth, not knowing whether I should thank him first or tell him that it was impossible for us to be together anymore. Marlon raised his hand to stop me and forced a smile that was uglier than a cry. Rose, promise me one thing, when you get married, don't send me an invitation. The ward was terrifyingly quiet, with only the ticking of the medical equipment echoing. Marlon turned his head to look out the window. After a long while, his hoarse voice sounded again. Rose, we're even now. The people from the Miles family will be here soon. You should go. I looked at his pale face and was taken aback for a moment. Your injury, anyway, you saved me. Just go. Marlon interrupted me, his voice trembling slightly. Leave me alone for a while. I took one last look at him, opened the door, and walked forward with big strides, not looking back. The end.